so I can get to this view. I'm going to run comparative sales. I'm actually going to run it out of, I'll run it from over here, but let's open up comparative sales. And I want to open up this view because there's a number of things I want to show you that are, this is how to manipulate dimensions first and then measures. So one of the first things that we want to talk about, and let me just, another quick tip, you can get rid of that menu over on the left there just by clicking the Stratum logo, or you can in fact set that up in your user options, which are accessible over off the gear here. You can see your user options to say whether or not you want that to display every time. But anyways, that just gives you more screen space, so you can see that. So, but the first thing I want to talk about here is this area right here in Stratum. If you look at this area here, this is what we call the navigation pane. And the navigation pane has rows, columns, and the view filters in it. And for rows, columns, and filters, and as you might imagine, these are rows, up here are columns, and then a filter is something that limits the data that's being displayed in this grid that I have displayed here. If you remember when we talked last time, rows, I'm currently looking at divisions. If I click on the header for divisions, it's going to drill down in a subtotal mode. If I drill on an individual one, it's going to drill just on that one. So I can click on the F here, and that drilled me down to product brand, and it's going to follow along with what I have up here. Now, what we really want to spend time on today, we talked about drilling last time, is how do I add dimensions to these things? So let's say I want to get the, I don't know, let's say I want some customer information in here. So I'm going to go ahead and look for my customer stuff. Here's some of my customer stuff. These are in alphabetical order. So I clicked on the plus sign, and now I can add things to this display. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the sold to and the customer state. How about that? We'll just add those two things. And you'll see they get added to my list here, and they get listed right after the last dimension I had displayed, which is the product brand. So the product brand and the division are in blue because they're displayed. And then it assumes, Stratum assumes, because you just added those things, you want to go use them. So the next thing I drill, I might go here, but I really want to change the order of this stuff. So I want customer state to be in front here. So may I just drag that? So you can move things around. So this acts as a breadcrumb or a breadcrumb trail for where you've been and where you're going to go. It also allows you to alter the path that you'll follow, both by adding dimensions when you click the plus sign and by manipulating the dimensions in the order you want to see them. So, and I could drag this all the way and say, hey, I want this to start with customer state, so I can see the customer state. So you can do a lot of things there. Now, on top of that, I can do filtering as well. And filtering is, I can do that on a couple of levels. The first I can do is I can go ahead and put something in the view filter here. So if I want my entire display to be filtered by a certain set of things, I can do that. Let's say that the example I have is I want to filter on my distribution channel. So let's get my distribution channel and just get it into my filter. I'll do that. So here you can see I've got the distribution channel. I've now added that to the view filter. So I can say, hey, I really want to filter on just a certain set of my distribution channels because I've got 4 or 5 of them. I really want to focus on my, let's say, my indirect channels. So I can filter on something 2 different ways. In Stratum, you always have the ability to filter just by going and clicking on a filter. Anywhere you see this funnel means there's a filter associated with this. And the big funnel at the top here allows me to filter on everything I'm currently looking at. I can pick anything on this display and I can filter by it. It's the simplest way to do filters. Or the shortcut tip, if I wanted to say, hey, I just want to focus on distribution channel, you could click right here. If it's in this view filter line, you could click on view distribution channel and take you straight to the filter just for that. Let's just use the funnel. I'm going to come in and you can see distribution channel here is listed. These other things that are listed, these are dimensions, and I could filter on any of them. But in this case, I'm going to click the funnel for distribution channel. You can see I've got 4 or 5 of them here. And I said I want to filter on my indirect stuff. So I'm just going to click both of them. I'm going to say, okay. That's the only things I want to filter on. So I'm going to say, okay. And now you'll see it tells me I'm filtered on multiple channels. If I hover on that, it'll tell me actually very specifically which ones I'm filtered on. So now the data in this display is limited only to those items that I've filtered on. Now, as I mentioned, dimensions can go anywhere within this view pane. So I can move dimensions from one to the other. Maybe instead of filtering, I want to put these in the columns. So now you can see that remember, we're still filtered. You can see there's a little filter icon right there that allows me to say, hey, we're filtered on distribution channel. So I'm only seeing these two. And you can see the description and stuff is along the top here. So now I've added columns to my display along with a grand total. So you can see I can move these dimensions around within the view pane and they have different impacts. I'm still seeing only the data for these two distribution channels, but it's segmented out in the first set of columns here in this set, and then in this set, and then down at the end with the grand total, I'm seeing the cumulative, the accumulation of those. And again, I can move this. I can simply move that back to the view filter just by dragging it here, and now I'll be filtered on that stuff. So I can do that that way as well. So that's a little bit about dimensions and manipulating dimensions, adding dimensions. And remember that you can put dimensions in rows, columns, and filters, and you can use the filter button to filter on anything that you want to filter on. So you can see those, and then ultimately we'll talk about measures here in a minute, but there's a couple other things I wanted to show when we talk about dimensions. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was, let's say that I'm looking at the customer state, and I don't know, I'll go to one of these, I'll drill on Illinois, for example. I've only got a few customers in Illinois. So I'm drilling on Illinois, and whoops, and I went to division. So what I really wanted to show you was the customer sold to, but that's not a problem. I'll just take the customer sold to, drag it over here, drop it in there. And now I've put that as the next thing to be displayed, and I'm looking at customer sold to. So I'm looking at customer sold to, and let's say for the sold to, I really want to see the URL for this customer, these customers, anytime I look at a customer. So how do I get what's called additional attributes? Remember, I mentioned that the description is an attribute. Well, I have other attributes associated with generally customers and products are the big things people have, but any dimension can have additional attributes depending on your Stratum setup. But if I go, I say, hey, for the customer sold to, I'm going to right click on that header. I'm going to add what's called attribute relationships. So the attributes, the big word here, I'm going to search for the attributes. And these are all the attributes now that I have associated with customer. You can see these, and they're just listed down the side here. I said I was going to add the URL, so there's that. Maybe I'll throw in another one here just for fun. I think I mentioned email earlier, so I'm going to control click on that so I can highlight multiple things. If I scroll down, you'll see the ad. That's here, and I can add that. So you'll see they're added to the list here. The description by default is always selected in Stratum. So now I've got the email address plus the URL, and I'm just going to say okay. And now you can see, here we have all my customer information, right? I've got stuff about the customer. I've got their number. So this is their customer number. That's what Stratum typically shows because that's the unique identifier for each of these. Then I've got the sold to description, the email address, etc. And maybe I want these in a different order. So again, you can just drag things around down here. I'm going to move the URL to be before the email address, for example. So you can do that kind of thing. So that's how you add additional attributes. Now, each of you will have different attributes associated for your products and your customers based on how Stratum was implemented. But you can see those just by going to whatever you're looking at and right-clicking and saying add and go to attribute relationships. And I'll bring up that window. And we can see here, if I go over to product, and you can actually do this up when the product's here, I can click on attribute relationships for products, and that'll allow me to see all of the information we have about products that I can look at. And we have a number of different things here for our products. And again, this is our products here at Sylvan in our demonstration environment that we have. But, I could have a commodity code and an ABC code that I'll add those and say, okay. Doesn't affect what's shown right here, but if I was to drill, hey, what products does what products do these customers buy. I can drop that on there, and this is going to show me now. You can see here's my product information, right? I said I wanted to see the ABC code and the commodity plus the description and the identifier. So you can see all that stuff here in Stratum by adding those attributes. So that's an example. That's all about dimensions and adding attributes. So let's get back to, let's say, the customer level here. And let's talk a little bit about measures. So measures are the numbers. So I'm going to get back to customer sold to here. Actually, I'm going to go to customer, the state. And this is fine. I'll do this by state right now. And I want to talk about the numbers. So in this particular example, you can see that up at the top in these headers, it tells us that we have actual sales amount, and this is July of this year to September of this year. So for my demonstration, just so no one gets confused, because I am aware that it's only March, but our demo it's always September in our demo. So you can see here that's a rolling 3 months in the first 2 columns right here. Then I have the current month, which in my demo is September. And then we have year to date. My year starts in January. You guys might have years that start in different months based on your fiscal calendar, but my year happens to start in January. So these are year to date numbers. And each of these columns, in terms of what's being displayed from a time perspective, will roll because I've set those up to use current month, current year, 2 years ago, I'm sorry, 2 months ago, things like that. And we'll see that in just a second. So these are rolling 3 in the first column, current, and then year to date in the last column. Let's say though that I would like to add a measure in here. Like this is showing me amounts. Let's say I want to add units. So I want to get units in here. I don't want to get rid of amounts. I just want to add units. So there's a couple ways you can do that. And we're going to look at that. There's actually multiple ways, but I'm going to show you the simplest ways that I'm familiar with to add those. So again, in Stratum, I'm going to go up to these big buttons at the top here, and you'll see the one that says 1, 2, 3. So remember I said measures are numbers. Just click on the number, and now I have the ability to do a couple of things here from this window. This window shows me all of the measures that are in blue. So remember, blue is kind of the thing in Stratum that indicates something's displayed. So this is in my grid. And I can, up here at the top of this window, I can add a measure here. So I add a new measure. And for today, we're going to talk about adding what's called regular measures. So this is data that's accumulated in Stratum, but ultimately we'll get to talking about calculated measures in another one of these sessions, or you can go to some of the resources I talked about and find plenty of information on adding calculated measures as well. But I can add a measure there, or I can copy one of these measures. So you can see here that pops up and says copy this measure. So let's do one of each. Let's go ahead and just add a measure from scratch. So my scenario was I wanted to add units. So I just clicked on the regular. This brings up a list of all the measures you have in Stratum. Now in our demo, we have hundreds, if not 1,000 measures available. So I don't want to scroll through those till I find what I want, but this list should only include the things you have in your Stratum implementation. So I'm just going to search on sales, and here's my sales measures, and you can see I've got a bunch of them, but here's units. I wanted to add sales units, so I'm going to add sales units. Once you've highlighted something, and you can here highlight multiple items as well, but I'm going to add just sales units, and I have to identify down here in the bottom of this right here, I have to identify time. So I've got different things here. I got to pick a time unit. So when I pick a time unit, typically you'll get to choose from days, weeks, months. Those are the kinds of things that are in the time unit. This particular view is looking at months. So I'm going to go ahead and pick months, but you can see here we have days, fiscal months, we have regular months, quarters, and weeks. Those are all things we can pick from. So I'm going to pick months just to stay consistent. I mentioned rolling, so I want this to be current year. I'm going to pick current year for both of them. And then I'm going to say, I wanted this to be rolling 3 months. So if I go back 2 months, which is 2 months ago, just select 2 months ago, and then plus the current month, makes 3 months in total. So 2 months ago, 1 month ago, plus the current month gives me 3 months. And that's a rolling 3 months. And I just say, okay. And that's going to add the measure. And you can see down here, it was added at the bottom. I can drag that anywhere I want. I'm going to put it after my current year stuff, because that's what I put in there, current year. So I'm going to add it there. And now if I say, okay, you'll see that column has shown up in Stratum right where we inserted it. It's right here. So I've added a new measure. I have dollars and I have units now. So I have both of those. Now I mentioned that there's another way to add a measure that's sometimes quicker. If you already have a measure here that has all the time units you want, all that stuff's already set up, or maybe it's a calculation and you want to copy it ultimately. Again, I'm going to go up and I'm just going to click on that 1, 2, 3, the measures. But I'm going to copy this one that shows me right here. It shows me actual sales amount July through September of last year. So I'm going to go over here to the copy feature. And I'm going to go ahead and click this right here. It says copy this measure. This brings up a slightly different window, gives me a couple more things I can maintain. Note I could maintain the description up here. And Stratum by default uses the descriptions that your implementation has associated with measures. So in best case, you can just leave that alone. Plus it has the descriptions for the time period you selected. And then also I can change the format. So you can see here, it also tells me right now, I copied this and this is the sales amount and I wanted to find the sales units. So I'm just going to open this up and go, where are my sales units? Here they are. I'm just going to pick sales units. Now, if I needed to search, I could have clicked the magnifying glass and I could search for these measures just like last time. But now I don't really need to do anything. The time's all set for me. I don't have to do what we described last time, going in and set the time, because it used the time from the column I copied. But note it also copied the format. In this case, this format is a dollar format. I probably want this to be more of just a plain number format. And then if you wanted, this is a feature that's in the latest version of Stratum, I could actually color this column, and I'm just doing this to show you can do it. But there I added a color to the column. And let's see. Oops. Yep. Say okay. So I've added a color to the column. Then I just say okay. And I'm back at my measure window, but you'll see it inserted it right here after the one I copied. So it automatically inserts it there. And then I just say okay. And now I have that column right here in blue that I added. So this is how I can add measures, and I can add as many measures to this view as I would like. Now, ultimately, let's say that then I want to see this by state, and I wanted to see the product brands, that have been bought in each state. So I'm going to drill this down one level. So now I've got this view, and I say, okay, great. This is what I want to come in and look at every day. I want to save this because originally I had a view that was called, what was this? It was comparative sales. You can see up here, it's one of my favorite views. You can tell it's a favorite because it's got a gold star. Sounds a little odd, but anyways, it's got a gold star associated with it. So I have that. So this is comparative sales. So I want to save a copy of comparative sales. So to do that, all I got to do is go over here and click these little save with a plus sign here. And I'm going to save a view called example 2. And I'm going to mark this. You probably would not do this, but I'm going to mark this to be deleted because I want everyone to know that's using the demo. We can delete these examples when I'm done. Now, you're going to give it a unique name, and you might put your initials in front of it. You might call it Joe's View, something like that. Whatever you want to call it, you can give it a description. And then the other thing you're interested in here, most of you, this will come up defaulted to personal. Mine came up defaulted as global because I'm an administrator of the system. So I can make a view that everyone sees, but I can create a view that's personal, or I can save it as, you'll see the other option here is shared. And I can create a shared view. That means everyone in my group that's in the same group of users as I am would see this view. So it can be personal or shared. I'm going to save this as personal. And you'll see at the bottom here, what view group is it in? Since I copied a view that was in my favorites group, it's going to add it to favorites, but I could put it in any group that I have listed down the side. And I'm going to go ahead and save this and do a save. Let's see, and I can put it, I might have a working group, whatever, but I can just put in my favorites, as I mentioned, because I'm going to save that. So now if I get rid of this view and have it just, this is how I come into Stratum and I look over here, there's multiple ways I can find that view. If you remember, I could open my recent and favorites, and obviously it's here now because I was just working on it. But if I'd done this one day and came in the next, it would be listed here. I also find it over here in favorites. Here it is, example 2. I can get to that one. So I can come in here and I can run it either from here or from over here. So if I run it from here, it's going to run that view as I saved it. It's got the columns we added, all that stuff, all that's in here. And then the other thing I can do if I wanted this to show up in my favorites is just click the star up here. And now if I open the recents and favorites window, you'll see it's actually over here in my recents and favorites as well. So that gives me a way to see that stuff. So you have different ways you can save a view, different ways you can get to it through the recents and favorites. I can make it a favorite. And we've talked about how I manipulate measures, and we've talked about how you can add dimensions, etc. So for dimensions, you tend to work in this in the view navigation pane up here. For measures, you work in the 1 through 3 box, and for filters, you click the big filter up here. And one of the things I wanted to show in the filter was when I'm filtering right now, the default, it comes up and it shows me my dimensions. And we talked about being able to filter on distribution channel. For example, if you wanted to include or exclude, you can just say that. If you don't have an include or exclude box here, you just need to talk to your admin. Older versions don't have this, the new versions do. But you can always click on this. Then I can clear the filter entirely by clicking on the X here, and that will just clear that. Now, the other thing I might want to do is filter on my data. And I might want to filter on, I don't know, actual sales or something like that. So let's say I want to filter on year-to-date sales, which is down here, actual sales, January this year to September this year. And I want to filter on that. And let's say I want to see, I don't know, I could say stuff greater than something. I could say I want to see, maybe I want to see the top, I don't know, the top 4 in every, what am I looking at here? I'm looking at states. So I want to say top 4, for example, top 5, top 10, whatever you want to do. But now you can see for each state, I'm seeing the top 4 brands. And if I was to drop the product over in here and drill down to product, if I drill down to product on this particular brand, it's going to show me the top 4 products. In this case, I'm sorry, that was the ABC code. But yeah, no, here we go. I only had 2 products in that brand, so it only showed me 2. But conceptually, you get the idea. It's going to continue to show me the top 4 as I move through stuff. So I can add those filters as well. So we've talked about measures, dimensions, all that stuff. The other thing that comes up is people want to export to Excel. So I wanted to talk a little bit about exporting to Excel. And to do that, the simplest thing you can do is click the button here. So I click the Export to Excel button, and that exports a file. It's going to look exactly like what I'm looking at. A couple of quick tips on how to make exports go as fast as possible when you're messing around with this. So you can click this button right here called the Edit Display Options. And you can come in, make sure you don't have locking rows and columns on. Doesn't cause it to not work. It'll just run faster if it doesn't have it. You should always have paging on, because when you export to Excel, paging limits how many rows are displayed. But when you export to Excel, it always exports all the rows. And then the last part is show totals. If you don't want totals in your Excel sheet because you're going to use it as a pivot or something like that, and the subtotal rows mess you up, you can just turn off the rows and columns. And then you can also say repeating labels. So if I turn those on and say, okay, before I export, you'll see that now it's filled in all the blank columns here. It repeats that all the time. I don't have subtotals in here. And then one more tip is that for some of you, if you have a feature of ours called the broadcast server, you'll have export data. And this is the absolute fastest way to export data. So that's what I was going to cover today. Number of ways you can get a hold of us or contact us. Let's see. here's a bunch of resources, the help button, our YouTube channel, which you can get to off the homepage, which is sylvan.com. You can get to the forum. There's a really good discussion in the forum. If you search in the forum on Excel, you'll find a good discussion on how the fastest ways to export to Excel. If you go to sylvan.com, you'll be able to find all of the previous recordings that we have, or those are also available in the YouTube channel. And if you can find stuff there. And then let's see, the last thing I wanted to show was just, oh yeah, how to contact us. So if you've got further questions, further ideas for things for us to do, you can contact me directly at frankbunker@sylvan.com. Most people use the support contact down at the bottom here, and you can contact them, and information will get to where it needs to go. Or if you have a question, use those guys. They're completely knowledgeable about everything Stratum. So with that, that's our time today. I certainly appreciate everyone attending. I wish we had time for questions. We're a little short. So if you do have a question, don't hesitate to email me at frank.bunker@sylvan.com, and I'll respond. Hopefully I can answer your question, or if not, I'll call the support guys, and I'm sure they know the answer.